Hello, y'all. Welcome into the USL show. We've got a nice four-man panel. Kaylor decided that his honeymoon was more important than talking about soccer on a Tuesday night. Can you imagine? But I'm excited about the group we've got here. So, Ryan, we'll start off with you. How you doing?
I'm doing well tonight. There was a pretty monumental trade involving a former Wilmington Hammerhead player this week that we'll talk about on the show. So I had to bust out the old Hammerhead kit.
Love it, love it. Alan, how about you?
Good. It's getting a little bit warmer in Southern California, which I am not looking forward to living further north during the week than I normally do. So I am jealous of San Diego weather at this point. But things are pretty good. We're ignoring Open Cup tonight because it doesn't matter tonight because it's one team playing itself two different times. So MLS wins.
Yeah, the single entity hit'll get you. But Phil, how we hanging?
Doing all right. And yeah, I mean, club's top of the USL power rankings. So what more could you ask for, you know?
I mean, if Nicholas Murray says it, it kind of has to be true, is my philosophy in life. So good to see. Before we got into some more serious things, I wanted to ask the question if anyone was following along with the future Milwaukee USL Championship team's naming contest that they're running. No,
I
because
like Lake
yeah.
Effect. I do
just
like that.
Lake Effect as a team name is fantastic. I'm very partial to Milwaukee Tall Boys, which is in fact in the 64 name bracket. So that's the kind of havoc we need.
It also shows the mistake of letting fans actually vote for the name because they're never going to pick the most serious one or the realest one. And as you know, Trolley McTrolley face or Footy McFooty face, like this is just going to end up being a beautiful disaster that we get to go along the journey with their fans.
Milwaukee Confluence is just like wild. Confluence made it in the bracket.
It's so over the expectation of what you think you might get. I kind of like it, but it's also really stupid at the same time, possibly.
I don't know. Milwaukee Cheese is my vote. It's just Milwaukee Cheese.
I mean, who can deny
You can
it?
get
honestly?
all the SEO. You can get all the SEO people coming in to any person who tries to Google Wisconsin or Milwaukee cheese, and I was like, oh, this could work to get more people in who don't know about the soccer team.
And for anyone who's ever driven from Illinois into southern Wisconsin, I would love a Mars Cheese Castle front kit sponsor. Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for.
And think about like the variation of kits you can have, like the different cheeses, like supplemented on, like you can do one with some holes in it and be Swiss. Like you can do like a baked brie, that one that would be nice around like crust around the edges. Like the possibilities are endless. You can do American and just walk out with orange shirts that are wrapped in plastic. Like, I mean, come on, like marketing genius here.
This segment brought to you by Evan of the USL Show 1.0, by the way, if you know of his cheese predilection from Twitter. I did want to shout out also, I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to some of the early returns from the W League. I know my Indy 11W off to a nice 2-0 start, but good to see that going. So I don't know if anyone has anything there. Yeah, and if not, I will go ahead and get some of the hard business out of the way right now and just like to say that today's podcast is brought to you by BetStamp. You can go to the app, you can go to the website and find out that it is helping thousands of people win at sports betting for free every single week. If you think about the way that, say, you're trying to book a flight and you get on Expedia to compare rates, compare prices, you can do that with BetStamp, but for betting odds. Essentially, it's going to take all of the sports books out there and find the odds that are most in your favor. And specifically within the USL, which is very easy to take advantage of, that's something that can make you a lot of money. They call it line shopping. It's just clicking on any matchup and seeing those different odds from across the board. So go to your Apple iOS store, the Google Play Store, search BetStamp on your browser, go sign up and use that USL promo code that is simply just USL. and start your journey to successful sports betting today. And if you don't have, or if you have already signed up and you haven't put in the code, you can just go to your settings and do that. We really appreciate it. We benefit from it. So go make yourself some money. And just because we've been offering up odds, you can bet on Birmingham at plus 117 against Detroit this weekend, which, I mean, bet 10, win 12 back on Birmingham against a Detroit team that is not going to win 2 games in a row. Let's be real. That feels like a good odds. So, hey, I'm seeing that 117 number. Go on BetStamp, find something better for yourself, and make a little bit of money.
And if you want to add another really fun kind of open cup bet, you can get Pittsburgh for plus 215 to beat up against Columbus, a team who did lose to a USL club last year.
See, yeah, the sharps here have some nice betting advice for you. But with that, let's get to some of the events of the last week. And I want to start down in League One a little bit. And this was an interesting game on the pitch where Charlotte beat North Carolina 2-1 with two of the better teams in League One going at it. But I think that the thing I want to lead off with was the issue where a group of North Carolina fans poured beer on the team photographer for Charlotte. And then it came out afterwards that it wasn't just fans. There was a member of the team front office for North Carolina FC engaging in the activity. So whoever wants to come in with a take on that, the response or lack thereof from the club and the league, and where we're sitting with it all.
I mean, I would say it's a no, probably not acceptable.
Don't do that. No, it really is like it's crazy that, you know, in a group of traveling fans to have a member of the front office in the thick of things is probably, especially in a game that is taking place like not that far away. You know, I think it's one thing when like you'll see members of clubs like when they're the only person in a, you know, several 100-mile road trip. This is obviously a more local rivalry, and the fact that there would be traveling fans and that a member of the club would participate in something like this, I mean, absolutely unacceptable, number one. But number two, the fact that like there hasn't, we're kind of just acting like it doesn't exist. Like I literally, I was like scouring Google too to try to find like where is any sort of acknowledgement that this happened, and it's all on Twitter in terms of like the video evidence, but that's literally it. Like there's no acknowledgement that this has even happened.
Yeah, and it seemed like one of those kind of really odd situations that there are just some things you can't do in a stadium, and even regardless of how you want to play a rivalry in any sense, you can't do this, and it's not really acceptable for a front office to have one of their own members to basically partake in that activity, because I'm always a believer that how a front office behaves starts at the top, and if it's accepted at that level, then how does that kind of look for the rest of the organization?
Yeah, and North Carolina put out a statement where they said that the front office member was at the game. They admitted that, but said they weren't there in a working capacity, as if that makes a huge difference. And then they said that they were going to look at it with an investigation, which is code for this is the public statement, and then we're never going to talk about this again. I think it's disappointing to see in a lot of ways, for sure. And what's really been a great year for North Carolina, where they're rebounding from, I think, 2 straight years in nearly last place to finally be competitive at the top end of League One once again. It's really a damper on what they're doing there.
And
oh, go for it.
I was just going to make another snarky comment about how low do you have to go to make people feel bad for Charlotte at this point with all of the news that's come out of that organization. But I mean, like, it's really one individual that people are upset about with Charlotte. It's not the staff. It's not the people who are trying to work their way up through their careers and take pictures for a team that's local and try to get in the sports scene. So like, just aside about how popular or not popular certain front office members of Charlotte are, it's just kind of, I don't want to say it's like as bad as some of the other things that we've seen happen on the pitch this year, but like this is a pretty low moment for North Carolina and, you know, USL in general to have this happen and then not have some sort of quick response and like maybe not fired. I don't know. I have a hard time saying people should be fired from their job, but at least have some sort of like repercussions and at least let the public know that they're taking care of the photographer if things are damaged, and really holding people accountable for the behavior, because you can't hold fans accountable if people are from the front office are behaving that way, official capacity or not. Sorry, Phil.
Oh, no. I was gonna go along the same lines and just say I think the league probably needs to be more concerned about it than they've been showing, just because the potential like sort of momentum around fan behavior is just really bad if you don't take action in these sort of situations. So that's my more concern, is like, just hoping that it doesn't spiral in terms of like allowing, anything crazier than that, or if they feel entitled to like this sort of thing. And it's just a bad look for the league.
And even just a league statement saying that, and just to come out publicly and say, do not throw anything onto the pitch at games, as like a bare minimum, should have been done.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen this.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we've seen this before. Like, I mean, I being an El Paso fan, the New Mexico one is the one that comes to mind against Timbers 2, where it was just like raining, beer cups and everything like on after they scored an equalizer. And yeah, that sort of stuff, it has to be stamped out.
Yeah, and I was even just going to connect it to what we've seen with Central Valley and some of the chanting from the crowd there that's got some controversy this year. So it's something that the league office needs to take a look at, just in terms of legislating fan behavior a little bit more closely, while still recognizing that the excitement and the community of it all is a big part of the game within reason. But unless anyone else has some more burning points there, another game that we predicted last week and then played out on the pitch was Tulsa going down by a 2-1 margin against Memphis 901. And apparently the front offices had some fun times during that game, talking about, hey, why don't we trade our 2 best players? Because we saw Rodrigo DaCosta, basically the face of FC Tulsa 5 years running now, get dealt for Philip Goodrum, who, despite kind of demanding to leave, was still second in the Golden Boot race last year. Like, this is an earth-shattering deal, and I'd love to get some perspective on it from y'all.
Yeah, I mean, DaCosta had nearly 180 appearances for Tulsa in his career there. He was basically the guy of the franchise for a while. But yeah, like we discussed at preseason, that Goodrum was unhappy at Memphis, among many other things kind of surrounding the team. But interesting to see the switch, because you're looking at an FC Tulsa team who's winless in their last 5 and a Memphis side who is unbeaten in their last 5.
I was blown away by this deal for that same reason, that with DaCosta being the face of Tulsa. And for me, it feels like if you're going to get Philip Goodrum on Tulsa, you want DaCosta in that side too, as like the playmaker. I mean, he's literally worn the 10 shirt for a reason for that team for a long time. He scores a lot of goals for them. And you're getting a Goodrum who, obviously coming off an incredible season last year with the amount of goals he scored, it is the only volume goal scoring season that he had at a USL level. And he is goalless in 9 appearances to start this season. So I know some of it could be connected to how he was feeling in Memphis, but Tulsa have taken a pretty big gamble here for my money.
I'm just picturing them sharing a plate of nachos discussing this during the match, which was, by all accounts, a very entertaining match. So I'm not sure how they had time to eat nachos and talk about a trade during a pretty well played, and then I think kind of unfortunate game for Tulsa. I thought they looked really good, and kind of maybe probably could have had something out of this match. But I mean, you got to take chances, I guess. Tulsa not exactly, pushing their way up to the top of the East consistently. And Memphis, like I said, they've been playing. You guys have said they've been playing pretty well as of late. But if a guy's unhappy, you move him on and you get what you can get. And I think 901's probably a little bit happier with this one, getting rid of someone who doesn't want to be there for a pretty good USL player. and you got to give something to get something. And I think this is Memphis kind of selling high-ish, although I don't know how they can with a guy who's clearly not happy. But it's an interesting bit of business, and I think it'll take the rest of the season to kind of declare who the winner of this trade is. But I would go with Phil with I will be interested to see what Memphis does with a ball distributor and a really good player.
Yeah, I think for me, what stood out is that the fit really isn't perfect for either team here. Memphis basically only has one striker on the roster now, and that's 18-year-old Knight Pickering, who that's awesome if you trust an 18-year-old to do the job throughout the rest of the year. But to be that thin up top is a really big deal. This is also a Memphis team whose star addition in the offseason was Bruno Lapa, who plays Rodrigo da Costa's position. So you're creating scarcity of minutes and opportunities there in a really odd kind of way. For Tulsa, I guess I'm here for the experimentation of it all. You've got one win this season. Even with da Costa being excellent in that stretch, I think it's worthwhile to experiment and see what you can do. There is the argument that da Costa is someone who's very dominant with the ball at his feet. He needs touches to be doing things. And with a more equitable distribution, maybe you get Marcus Epps more involved. Goodrum can be that finisher that they've lacked up top, and the gravity of that can open up some things for them offensively. Getting rid of the club's talisman, though, in a season when you're trying to restart, you're trying to rebuild a little bit, it's a tough decision to make, certainly. Optimally, maybe you get Goodrum in and you grant him that wish of selling him on to Europe or MLS if he recovers the form. There's just a lot going on here, and it makes it a really fascinating thing, especially in a league where you don't see these sorts of one-for-one kind of challenge trades very often.
And these two teams will play each other in a month's time on June 21st, just as a really good metrics to see how each side has kind of grown and developed with both of these players moving forward.
It feels like maybe I mean, the joke about them doing the deal during the match is funny, and like given the fact that Tulsa creates 5 big chances and misses 4 of them in this game, like there is an argument to be made like that just partway through the match. They're like, you know what? Like, I can't do this. We need somebody up top. And yeah, so I like that image of the over a plate of nachos, like on that 4th big chance missed, them just being like, you know what? Screw it. We're doing the deal.
And it saves on transportation costs, right? Like, just
yeah. I'm curious if they agreed to basically say, da Costa, I'm sorry, but you're going to stay here in Memphis, go through and get on the bus and come with us now.
Stay after class.
No, but I think really probably the biggest game of the weekend ended up being Birmingham against El Paso, of interest to Phil, where El Paso wins yet again. They, for a brief minute there, climbed up to first in the West, but just rolling form rise right now.
Yeah, the expert on El Paso. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
It's no, I mean, feel free to jump in, Alan, but it was interesting because this match felt very tense, I feel like, throughout, but in the underlying numbers and kind of how it ended up playing out in terms of chances, like, this is actually a pretty dominant performance from Locomotive. They really limited Birmingham well in terms of, I think I said on the podcast last week that, like, El Paso does a good job typically of like limiting kind of the big names and like keeping guys quiet who are those like big name danger men. And it was like a relatively quiet night for Pasher and co. Their goal does come against a run of play, which I think El Paso does still have that in them where they can give up a goal when they're on top. But I think, again, this is something we talked about just with the resilience and not really changing the plan, like just because, and not kind of losing grip on the game. And eventually, the chances they had, it did eventually like show through. And Liam Rose, unlikely goal scorer, and a good goal too, but it it showed a little bit that this team has just a number of contributors and a number of guys who are stepping up. And there are, so far so good in terms of they're getting the wins that I think like people are expecting. But going on the road to East Coast opposition and picking up points as comfortably as this team has ever since the first 3 games of the season is new. Like not even the Lowry, locomotive sides could claim that. So they were pretty poor on the road in the past. So yeah, there's a lot of good going on. I will say probably in this one, Eric McHugh at central defense, like kind of makes a claim for, Yuma is out and there's maybe a little bit of like panic stations when Yuma's out, but him and Bense Pavkovits played a really, really good game, I thought. And interesting to see that partnership with McHugh being so young as well.
Yeah, and this is an El Paso team, like we had mentioned, is the hottest team in the league right now with 5 consecutive wins. It's their first time with 5 consecutive wins since 2020, and it's just a team that is actually connected to my next No Meaningless Stat episode for this week. I think that's going up on Thursday. That we've been fairly impressed with after what had been a kind of slow start to the season, losing their first 3. They've really turned things around, and they have a bye week this week and then have a chance to pick up more points in more impressive fashion against New Mexico and San Antonio, both on the road upcoming.
Yeah, this was one of those ones where you kind of outplay your opponent and you immediately answer back against, a pretty well-worked goal for Birmingham for that first goal. Really nice ball movement. You bail out to try and stop a shot, and it just leaves you wide open to an extra guy in the box. But good on El Paso to rally. And then it was like, hey, they're really playing well. You hope that this doesn't end up as like a snake bitten 1-1 draw, because those things have happened, right? The next game we're going to talk about is kind of similar to that. But big up on El Paso for taking it to that next level and really continuing to put Birmingham under pressure and getting a pretty good win here to keep pressure on the top of the West. The teams at this point really feel like I think they have to keep getting 3 points, especially on the road, to keep pace. And I think it does put a lot of pressure on some of the higher performing teams in the West to maintain the pace with the Sacramento and El Paso of the West. And it's going to get increasingly more difficult to do that. And so I'm not sure people picked El Paso to do this well at the beginning of the season with kind of the pedigree of the coach coming in with his background, with what he just recently did, but it's really showing a lot of growth for the team. And, for El Paso fans, hopefully they can continue this run as long as possible and then put themselves in a position to kind of to maintain the status quo into a home playoff match for them.
Yeah, and I want to talk on the Birmingham perspective because we're lacking the person who would usually do that this time around. I mean, they've lost 6 out of 8 games in the league right now. They're sitting 5th in the East, but they've got a -5 goal difference right now. For me, the concern is that pretty much every player they brought in the fullback positions in the middle of the park, none of them are hitting. I was a lot of youthful players. If you're thinking about like Colin Smith and Ben Ravenno on loan from MLS, Gabriel Alves just fresh out of Marshall University. It's going to take time for some of these guys to get used to a professional environment, but it feels like week in and week out, they're at fault when Birmingham isn't able to score. They're at fault when there are errors that are allowing goals. It's something that wasn't a weakness in this team in the past because you had Johnny Dean filling in at right back, and that set the tone for everything this team was doing. And I think without that cog, teams are better able to address, like when Prosper Kasim, for instance, inverts and plays a very narrow role, you can really sell out towards the middle of the park and not have to respect the wide areas as much. And Birmingham isn't in bad shape by any means. I mean, we'll talk about them later. And being one of the farthest advancers in the Open Cup, they're getting results when they need them. But I think the confluence of a really packed schedule and some of the depth being lesser than it has in years past is really affecting them right now.
The Milwaukee confluence.
Yeah. Right. Phil, I did want to hit on that Liam Rose thing real quick. He's someone who caught a lot of flack early in his stint with the Locomotive in that replacing Richie Ryan role. What do you think it is about his game that has improved, or what about his deployment that has changed that's making him such an important player this year?
Yeah, it is interesting. I think the change from being like the lone six in a midfield three to this hybrid partnership with Eric Calvillo, I think it was something that it took them 3 games to figure out. It took them kind of like establishing that partnership and understanding where the other would, what space the other one was going to occupy and all those things. I think he's simplified his game a little bit in the sense that he understands like his role completely now and is doing just like the simple next good decision rather than trying to, I think Richie Ryan is famous for being like the pivot in many ways and being able to just like play these like quick around the corner passes first time and stuff when he's receiving the ball from the defenders. And Liam for me is now he's more so like a ball carrier in a lot of ways, and he draws a lot of fouls when he's like in possession, and but just often finds that next right pass. And in simplifying things, like having those connections with on that side of the field, both Costician, Miles Lyons, and having kind of those easy understanding, I guess, has for me made it where he now is making those like better decisions through the game because he understands like his role to the utmost. And I mean, in this one, it is, I was going to talk to your point about the fullbacks from Birmingham because the goals all come, well, basically all of the chances come from like wide attackers getting into good areas and then playing passes into the center, with the second one being kind of a failed clearance, which falls to Rose, who is able to gamble on like cutting out that pass and pressing rather than dropping deep, because I think he just has that understanding. And I didn't know he had that shot on him. We haven't seen that yet, but puts it right in the top corner too. So, that always helps. But I think you could see from the looks and reactions of the other players, it was a big moment for Liam, but also a rare thing. I don't think he's scoring that many bangers like in the scrimmages. So the reaction was pretty priceless too.
Yeah. Anyone else with thoughts on this game before we move on? Because if not, we have definitely the surprise result of the weekend where Detroit downs San Antonio FC 1-0 on a goal that came about 5 minutes into the match. So anyone can just speak on what a weird result this was.
I mean, it just shows how Keyworth is just such a difficult place to go and to get a result. I mean, if you're looking at last season, there were only 4 teams who went to Keyworth and got 4 teams who went to Keyworth and picked up a draw or a win from that match. And this was a Detroit City team who were winless in their last 8 games and just basically got shelled 5-1 last week away at Tampa Bay. And to get a 1-0 result against the defending champions of the league is certainly something that none of us really saw coming.
This this is one of the unluckiest results that I've ever seen. San Antonio had 13 shots inside the box. They absolutely had Detroit under siege for most of
on XG. This was 1.9 to 0.3 in favor of San Antonio. Yeah.
I will say, in terms of, it does test this game tests the limits of the beautiful game. Neither team completes 200 passes. So it was pretty end-to-end stuff, as you'd expect. San Antonio's style and Detroit's style aren't that dissimilar, but San Antonio's offensive execution was, I think, simply unlucky. And if we have to chalk it up to one variable, I think it's probably Harry traveling to Detroit and seeing the game in person. So now we know. And that love you, Harry. But no, so totally unlucky, but probably my goal of the weekend too, because I absolutely loved that goal. It is one of those just like stunners.
Yeah, Simonson
And
with that insane
yeah.
volley. I think Nate Steinwasser got the assist on that, which is a thing you
Yes.
love to see. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Steinwasser, like, this just shows his quality again. Like, you're relying on your borderline MVP goalkeeper to keep you in this match. And not that San Antonio had tons of like really strong looks. The one that was interesting was on the San Antonio disallowed goal. The announcers trying to claim it was offside. That was a little bit confusing. At the time, I had to rewind it a couple times, be like, "Wait, no, you can't. That's not a thing. That's not a thing." Apparently, like, probably just called a foul on Steinwasser trying to make a play. But this is one of those, soccer is soccer. It's it's you get an early goal and you bunker down and rely on your keeper. I mean, that's basically what they did. And, I think we've all had rooted for teams that have had this happen for them and been excited, but also rooted for teams where this happened against you and it's just the most frustrating thing in the world. San Antonio is going to be just fine. Like, they're going to be fine. And, this just shows the strength of, a Detroit team that once your goalkeeper gets hot and you defend decently well, not that San Antonio didn't kind of break them. They have like multiple like 3-on-2s and like really nice looks that they just couldn't put in the back of the net. Shots went straight at the keeper. Just a really frustrating night for San Antonio. But, San Antonio is still in contention to do some damage in the West, so this will be fine.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting as a stat with this one, and this was the first time it continues a streak of 9 consecutive losses San Antonio has had where they don't score in the game. You have to go back to the 2021 season to find the last time they lost a game where they did score. And I do like to think that Dean Smith was watching this game in England and basically saw Trevor James's game plan, and he was like, "I'm going to do that at St. James's Park on Monday night, and it's going to work."
I love the, Alan, you talking about like soccer is soccer, and like the duality of man is San Antonio 7-0 Charleston and then 0-1 Detroit. So yeah, like it is.
It happened this year with Liverpool.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Cause who followed that?
Man United and Bournemouth.
Yeah. God.
I think something that stood out for me in this game was Trevor James's lineup decisions, where typically you've got 2 central midfielders properly. One of them is going to be Maxi Rodriguez, who pretty much has free reign to do what he wants, get upfield offensively, roam all over and build up. This time around, he went with 2 very defensive-minded number 6 types with Lai Diop and Tommy McCabe. And I thought they both were excellent in this one, especially in that first half. Later on, Detroit moved into a back 4, which is something that you've seen a decent amount of this year. So they deserve credit for being pragmatic. The thing I've liked a lot here is, one, the way that Harry is just eating it on Twitter this week from the Northern Guard people, which I do feel bad because the guy spent a week like hyping up the fact that his son was so excited to be going to Detroit for this game, and then that was the result. But also, I mean, we're here for the memes at the USL show. So
you have to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would be brave enough to see the team I root for play at Keyworth. I think I would go as like a neutral to watch Detroit play somebody else. That way I could actually enjoy like not only what's happening on the pitch, what's happening off the pitch, without it feeling like I'm going to get trash talked, win or lose, right? So I think it's the same thing with like Phoenix. Is I prefer to go to Phoenix not when have a rooting interest, but to really kind of take in the environment and be around that club. So, I mean, maybe in the future, I'm not sure I can convince my wife to travel to Detroit. It might be like a solo trip, but at some point I would love to see a match there, and it will not be against San Diego.
The food trucks alone are worth the price of admission. Their food trucks are absolutely goated, I have to say.
Yeah, Footy's grand, take note. Real quick before I did want to hit on a League One game here, but Alan, can you just put in a quick word on that San Diego performance from the weekend to get that comeback win on South Beach?
Yeah, it was a big win. MLS is breathing down San Diego's neck, so they needed some sort of community building activity, and coming from behind in that fashion was one of those. Probably one of the most brilliant auto goals we've seen since the Tulsa match on that Grant Stoneman looper to the back corner, like really nice touch. Collier being back is really key for the team. He puts the defense under a lot of pressure. It leads to one of the own goals and kind of a fluky. There's 3 fluky goals in the game, and again, soccer being soccer, right? Blake Bodley tries to shoot, but I'm not sure he's really trying to cross it to Collier, and Collier gets his first goal of the season in a season where he's been really snake bit. Had a really couple of really nice looks on the goal line, just can't put it in, and then he scores a goal like that. It was a big moment. It was, I think. Nicholas Murray said it was reminiscent of the Tampa Bay 3-2 come from behind. But this is 2 wins on the road after falling twice at home. It was a big win for San Diego as they continue their 3-game road trip to Oakland and then I believe to San Antonio, where they play San Antonio, Sacramento, San Antonio. So those 3 points were super key, knowing that there's going to be a pretty tough stretch coming up.
Yeah, and just one more quick thing. How was the vibe on the ground there? Like, it seems to me like the community has really galvanized around the team since the announcement of the MLS. But yeah,
it has. I mean, MLS is going to pull a different crowd. There is some crossover, but I do believe that 2 years is a long time, is what I keep saying. Like, 2 years is a long time, and who knows what's going to happen. St. Louis was able to figure something out to really kind of bring the community back together again. We see what's successful there, both on and off the pitch. They're having quite a good year, and how they kind of built up to that. I think that a lot of USL folks are happier than they were at the beginning of that relationship. And so I still have lots of hope, and ultimately, like, more soccer, the better. But yeah, there's a galvanization of some pretty hardcore supporters around Loyal. What that means for the general public, we'll have to see. Miami, watching the lack of fans in that stadium is a stark reminder of what might be in store for a San Diego Loyal in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I did, like I said, want to hit on one League One game before we move into the predictions, though, and that is Central Valley, who had lost 5 out of 6 in the league. They'd gone 3 straight games with a red card, and so, of course, they get a 3-2 win over the defending champs, Tormenta.
I mean, this is a Central Valley team who started the year the same way that North Texas did in 2020, which was winning their opening game, going winless in their next 6, and then winning the 8th game they've played of the season. But yeah, I mean, this was a team who'd lost their last 4 and going up against the defending champions. And it just seemed like they really needed a win. I mean, mind you, they're still bottom of the table in the USL 1, and this is a Tormenta team who's alternated win and loss for the last 5 games. But yeah, this was a much needed result for Central Valley.
It just felt chaotic. I don't really know what exactly it was. There's something about Central Valley Stadium too, which just has a lower league quality to it. And being at Fresno State, all that stuff. But I think the quality of the goals for Central Valley should be something for them to probably latch onto. They did fashion some really good looks, and the finishes in particular, like a couple of chips in there, like it was quality. They fought up to the very end. So I guess, if nothing else, like, this team hasn't given up. I guess in the kind of moral sense, it's just a matter of whether this can be any sort of actual spark plug for any ongoing performance, or if this is just a flash in the pan against a Tormenta team that's been a little inconsistent.
I think Central Valley found a couple things that maybe might have improved their play, like not getting a red card. It was the first game in 4 games that they didn't get a red card. It's also the most goals they had 2 goals going into this game in the course of the season. They scored 3 in this one. The penalty was a little bit weird. I was surprised that they called that a penalty. Like, usually if you get the shot off, but maybe it was the type of tackle that was made coming from behind that, the center official called it a penalty. But the first goal was a really nice taking goal. It was a guy just beating the back line and putting a good strike over the keeper. Maybe not the best attempt at saving that shot, but USL League One, like this is like classic USL League One, which we haven't really had a whole lot of. But it's nice to see a team pick up a win, especially at home like this, to get some sort of positivity going. They have Hailstorm coming up, which they're a tough team, so who knows? And they're back on the road again. But you don't want to see a team just kind of languishing forever and not having really any good moments. And so this is really nice for them. I know it sucks for Tormenta, who, arguably played a nice enough game to get a road draw for Central Valley to have a nice moment this year after just a run of form that was not great. It's got to feel good.
Yeah, for me, I was impressed on one hand on how Central Valley looked in transition on the counter. Alexis Cerritos in particular was very sharp with the ball at his feet. I think it exposed something that Tormenta has suffered from all season, is that they're a little bit slow in defense. This was a team that was dominant defensively last year, and nobody has allowed more goals in League One so far. So that's definitely something to watch. I admittedly don't watch enough Tormenta, but I was surprised and kind of had forgotten that Keziah Sterling has only played 17 minutes all year through injury, and that's a massive deal. He was really their breakout offensive star last season. So getting him back, kind of figuring out what you're doing in that back line is going to be big for them. This is a big enough playoff field in League One that they're going to be okay, but you still probably want to see better results coming from where they were at the end of 2022.
And they're already 7 points off the top of the table, which, like you mentioned, it's half the field getting in, but this could be the difference of you want to have that first round bye versus you got to play the extra game.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and move on into the week that is to come, and we're going to start off with two predictions for the U.S. Open Cup games that have got USL teams playing. So we'll lead off with that Columbus against Pittsburgh matchup, and Ryan.
Yeah, it's interesting on which Columbus team do you think shows up for this game? You had the team in the third round who just squeaked past Indy 11 1-0, and then you also had the team that dominated against, to be fair, a red-carded Loudoun United 5-1. And this was a Pittsburgh team who showed a very tough match against New England Revolution going on the road, and now they're hosting Columbus in this one, a team who, as I mentioned earlier in the show, lost to a USL team last year. I do think Columbus get the result in this one, but after coming off the loss in the Hell Israel Derby, it's a potential chance that Pittsburgh can kind of get a result out of a team that's kind of licking their wins at the moment.
Yeah, Alan, how about you?
Yeah, I went with Columbus. I think this is about the time where the league that shall not be named in San Diego starts to take games a little bit more seriously than earlier rounds. So I have Columbus going through on this one.
Yep, Phil.
Yeah, as much as my heart wants to believe in the USL teams, I think Pittsburgh I just haven't seen enough consistency from, although I will say they have been better of late. But I don't trust them to get another result against an MLS side, even at home and even with Robert at the helm. And so I took Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be a clean sweep here, but I've got the Crew winning this one. If you just hear what coaches are saying across the USL, I know Nate Miller and Keno Smith both studied for their badges this summer with Wilfred Nancy, who's coaching Columbus, and there's nothing but respect. Columbus, wiped the floor with Loudoun in their last Open Cup game. They kind of did the same thing to Indy 11 the round before, but just couldn't finish in front of net. This is a much more defensively sound Pittsburgh team than either of those matchups, and I think Pittsburgh has really found some strength getting Danny Griffin back into the team after buying him back from Huntsville in MLS Next Pro. So there's a real chance you've got that whiteout crowd at Highmark that maybe Pittsburgh can do something, but the Crew are probably too strong here. So USL show very much endorsing our teams here, but
Right.
I think we're gonna we're gonna get some better stuff in terms of this Charlotte Birmingham matchup. Hopefully, Ryan.
Yeah, I think this is tough. You have Birmingham, who played a championship and a NISA team in their first two kind of Open Cup games, whereas you've had a Charlotte FC team who played Tormenta and then beat Orlando in the last round. And going on the road always kind of makes this like a really interesting game. I was actually curious just to check if this was like one of the largest just soccer games ever played in Alabama. And there was a 1996 Olympic tournament game between the USA and Argentina, which saw 83,000, so probably not. But I do think Charlotte, just given their form right now, they do get past Birmingham and they just kind of move to the next round.
I am just happy that Kaler's happy, and so I want him to continue to be happy. And so I am picking Birmingham to get through. Not necessarily because I believe in a lot of what Birmingham is doing, because we talked a lot about some of their flaws. And it's not like what team we're talking about? Charlotte. Charlotte is not that much different where Columbus is in MLS right now, but I think I have to pick one USL team to go through. So I'm gonna show some love to Kaler and pick Birmingham.
Again, it absolutely pains me to choose the MLS side to go through, and I didn't want to do that. I think the concern is, just purely about Birmingham's.
Back there. That would be weird. Look at this fortress of a fence.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happened here with the background volume we're getting right now.
I feel like having just seen Birmingham, like my team beat Birmingham, I couldn't really support, like, pick them going through, because it just seemed like I know too much, and I know Kaler definitely is all in on this one, but karmically, like, everything balances out, so maybe Birmingham's building up the karma, and maybe Tyler Pasher just gets enough of a chip on his shoulder for them to go through, but I still have Charlotte winning.
Yeah, I mean, I probably think Charlotte is the heavy favorite here. They've won 6 out of 8 games straight up in all competitions right now. I don't like the form that Birmingham's in, and they've had a lot of fixture congestion. I felt a need because, again, USL show, to pick a USL team, and I think Birmingham is just a little bit more likely to win than Pittsburgh is. So I'm going with the Legion here. And I do think when you mentioned Pasher, there is an argument to make that Birmingham has 4 or 5 guys who can just kind of pull something out of their hat and win a game, which you can't say about the Riverhounds. The Riverhounds are a system-based team. So if somebody does it, it'll be the Legion. I'm picking them to do it, but I'm not necessarily confident. So pivoting back into proper USL action, a game between a team that's hot and a team that's sputtering a little bit. We've got Colorado Springs at the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Ryan.
Yeah, I think this is just simply down to form. I mean, Tampa Bay Rowdies have won their last 4. Colorado Springs have lost their last 3. I think the Rowdies pick the win in this one.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where I like playoffs because, like, playing somebody over the course of the season, like, it depends on when you get them. And, a month ago, I think we feel differently about this matchup. But you have to go on what form Tampa Bay has been in versus what Colorado Springs has been in. And I think Tampa Bay just continues to roll and be successful. And so I'm going to go Tampa Bay on this one.
Yeah, I think Colorado Springs, we talked a few weeks ago about how, like, they can't keep getting away with this after the win against Charleston, because they had a very even goal difference, but had won 5 in a row or whatever it was, and the regression kind of began from there, and they've lost 3 straight. I think a trip to Al Lang is exactly what they don't need, and Tampa Bay is going to take care of business.
Yeah, with the panel on this one, I've got the Rowdies winning. Outlying is a really tough venue. This is a Rowdies team that is winning games, but they're showing a lot of tactical flexibility. If you're not watching them play, Charlie Dennis is quickly becoming the breakout star of the season, at least in the East right now, doing it all in the midfield for them. I really like Ryan Spalding on that left wing. He's someone who came in pretty late on loan from New England, and he's tearing it apart. Colorado Springs, I know everyone else has said it, but they've really, I would say, regressed to the mean of where they ought to be with those underlying numbers. I think it was a nice story that they came out of the gate, started well under Stephen Hogan, saw some of those fresh faces, really hit the ground running, but there's a lack of defensive depth and defensive health there that's hurting them. So I've got the Rowdies pretty confidently taking the 3 points here. And then a match close to my own heart is the next one up, the Louisville Indianapolis Proximity Association football contest, as we've got Lou City traveling to Carroll Stadium to face off against the 11.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. If you're looking at the history within this rivalry, you actually have to go all the way back to 2020 to find the last time that Louisville beat Indy 11 in this one. But as I said with Tampa Bay and that one, this is really down to form. After Louisville lost 5-0 to Sacramento, they've really kind of turned things around and are unbeaten in their last 5. And as you see Charleston kind of taking up and down form as of late, and Tampa Bay getting hot, I think Louisville is going to want to keep pace with the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference, and they'll get a win here and just kind of end that long streak without a win in this rivalry.
Yeah, Louisville's on a good run. Maybe not scoring as many goals as they would like to, although the recent 3-1 victory is pointing maybe to a more positive stretch. Indy 11 has been back and forth, winning, losing, winning. So maybe they're ready to continue that. Again, another team that isn't really scoring as much as probably they would like to. But I think Lou City has enough to get this one done.
Yeah, Indy, it's obviously been like spotty. It's been a little bit better of late. But with that, I do think Louisville's just been a little bit stronger. And I think their resurgence is enough to get past Indy. Although I will say the one kind of wild card here is that Louisville does play a midweek game prior to this, so maybe something that Lowry and Co can exploit. But I still think Louisville will get the win.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make, that Louisville, who's missing Josh Winder at the U20 competition that's going on right now, they're going to be facing off against that new look Goodrum-led Tulsa front line. That's going to be something for their defense to handle. And Indy, who, shock of all shocks, came out in a back 3 last time out against the Switchbacks, which are very un-Lowryian in recent iterations of this 11 team, and they looked a lot better for it. They beat the Switchbacks on XG. They got that 1-0 win and finally kept a clean sheet. Just given the recent form in this Derby matchup, I kind of fancy the 11, but Louisville's going to come out firing. They know that they need to pick up the pace a little bit and start getting these results to cement themselves near the top. So I think they only get a draw here because I respect what Indy's doing, but I think they'll probably look the better side. And then one more game to wrap up the prediction slate here. Fun one in League One with the 2 expansion sides taking on each other, and that's Knoxville at Lexington. Ryan.
Yeah, this was Knoxville and Lexington's first matchup against each other from the start of the year, and it's now their second in the series. It's going to be really interesting to kind of just see how each team has kind of grown since that first matchup. Knoxville had that first opening win, and they sit currently third in the league and with a chance to be second in the league if results go their way. Lexington has had a bit more of a tougher start to the season. They're currently tied on points with Central Valley, and even a win this weekend wouldn't get them back into a playoff spot. I think it's going to be at least a better showing for Lexington, and maybe Knoxville has a little bit coming back down to earth here, but I'm picking a draw on this one.
I'm going with Knox because they just dropped their Pride logo, and it is like one of the cooler Pride logos I've seen as far as like the way the crest looks. And so shout out to teams supporting their communities. And so not that Lexington doesn't, But I just saw that. I was wanting to give them a shout out. So I'm going to pick them to win.
Yeah, I'm picking Knox to win this one as well. I think their recent results, obviously Chattanooga is one thing, but a good win over Greenville as well. And really their only loss in their last four is to Northern Colorado, who we've talked about as, has been impressive this year. So I think Knox is strong enough to get one over on their rivals again, this time in Lexington.
Yeah, Knoxville quietly had a really big week. Last time out, they had 2 games. They won both of them. That game against Greenville was crazy because they had 2 shot attempts total across 90 minutes and scored on both of them to beat the Triumph. So shout out to Gio on that one. They're not going to keep up that finishing. They're not Monterey, but I don't trust this Lexington team necessarily. I think Knoxville kind of has their number. The expansive back three that Knoxville plays is pretty well set up to take advantage of what Lexington's foibles are. So I've got a win for Knoxville here, and unfortunately that'll keep sending Lexington down the table to shout out our other League One guy, Tyler, here. But that's it. Does anyone else have any other USL news, notes, takes before we kind of get into the wrap up here? If not, I will send it over to you, Ryan. What you been watching, thinking about, consuming in the past stretch here?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how I know we'll have the 3-day weekend this weekend, that just how it's almost like a sports equinox of just there's so much good sports happening this weekend, not just within USL. You have pretty much every league in Europe who's pretty much just kind of wrapping up their season. Obviously, Championship Sunday for the Premier League on Sunday. You have the Bundesliga, which could be going to Dortmund for the first time in a decade's time on Saturday. Not to mention you have, even within sports racing, the Indy 500, the Monaco Grand Prix, the Coke 600 as well. It's just a really great weekend for sports and just something I always enjoy watching this time of year.
I saw a thing about the Monaco Grand Prix. I saw a picture of like the coast and all the yachts off the coast, and it just made me feel really bad about myself.
My favorite instance with the Monaco Grand Prix was last year. It was Lawrence Stroll, who owns the Aston Martin team. He had a yacht that was so large that he had to park it in the harbor, and then he had a smaller yacht that he took into the harbor to watch the race from there. And the smaller yacht was still the size of a house. And basically the larger yacht was a cruise ship that still had another ship next to it for just the staff members, I was like,
Jeez.
This is so much money. And it doesn't even produce all that great of just racing anyways. It's just more the spectacle of we're racing in a European country that has no tax laws.
My only other note here is that Adam Driver is the guy waving the green flag to inaugurate the Indy 500 because he's a secret Indiana native. But with that, I'll throw it to Alan. What you watching?
We finished up British Baking Show, the kids edition. The Evertonian did not win, so on par. Yeah, just been there's a new season of Queer Eye, which makes me like bawl my eyes out every single time. The first one is like a frat house, and you're like, really? I'm not sure I'm going to get into this, but it was very charming and reminds me that the kids are all right sometimes. So that's what I've been watching. I checked out the U20 World Cup this morning and saw some kids balling out too.
Free Diego Luna.
Yes,
right.
I don't know if you guys saw, but the Real Salt Lake account caught some hate after we quote tweeted and a lot of Locomotive fans piled into their mentions to say play Diego and all this stuff. So yeah, it was pretty funny.
I saw man, Diego Luna should get more minutes. I was like, where is he even playing? I had to look it up. That's how little. I Googled. I was like, oh, he's in Salt Lake. That's a bummer.
I don't want to talk about it.
But
he's been busy on Andor.
Although someone said this guy can't be under 20, he looks like he's been divorced several times. But shout out to the kids doing the thing. It took them a little while to get going today, but it looks like they're going to be on to the knockout rounds. And so congratulations to the U20 World Cup so far. And I'm going to go Wave game on Friday, so I'm super excited to see some NWSL.
Awesome.
Don't tell the Super League folks. But it'll be my first experience at Snapdragon Stadium before the Gold Cup this summer.
Nice.
Love it. Phil, how about you?
Yeah, taking in definitely a lot of sports. I've been enamored by the fact that for whatever reason the NHL has decided to go like just full violence in the playoffs, and like there's multiple guys who are like getting ejected from games and things for just like wild stuff. And that's been pretty crazy. But on the non-sports front, we had been watching Poker Face. I don't know if anyone watched that
Peacock,
series. Yeah, Natasha Lyonne on Peacock. Totally worth it. If you have Peacock already for the Premier League, like do yourself a favor and like make that streaming service worth something else. And then I'm desperately trying to get caught up on Succession. That's like my chore right now. Oh, I say chore. I like the show, but I'm trying to get caught up desperately. So, yeah.
That's a tough one to do multiple episodes in a row, particularly toward the end of the season of this past season. It's a lot. And yeah, I don't envy you trying to get caught up. Like one episode a week is perfect for me. I'm like just enough that like I don't need to feel like I have to bathe constantly after watching that show.
Yeah.
I got like through the first season and a half of it, and I was like, I should be liking this more. I'm not like, I was curious, like, why am I not enjoying this properly? And maybe I just need to go at it with another view or just watch it again. But yeah,
that, and I mean Barry, the other HBO show that I absolutely love. That is another one that like binging is not recommended. Like in terms of if you value like your mental health, like it can be a tough one. Like I made fun of Jeff Ruder last week for watching BoJack Horseman, because it's like, oh, so you're like not doing well at the moment if you're like binging BoJack Horseman. No, so Barry's the same kind of way, where it's like there are moments in that show where you're like, okay, I think I probably need to put this aside for a second and then come back to it. But amazing show,
dark, hilarious, but dark as night in terms of the tone of that thing. Yeah. I guess, boy, in terms of something. Well, last night I went to it was a repertory showing of When Harry Met Sally, but it was preceded by a Q&A with Billy Crystal.
Oh, and wow.
I've never seen a human be like that funny and engaging and just amazing to see talk, which it's Billy Crystal. Like he's made a life out of doing that, but it's different level when he's there. Yeah.
Were there any City Slickers 2 questions?
There were City Slickers 1 references, but nothing about what Curly's Gold or whatever the subtitle of that one is. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, he's one of the goats, so nothing but love to Billy Crystal, I guess. But I think that's all we've got for this. So thank you all for watching. If you're here live, listening, if you're there on whatever podcast player you're on, note that without Kaylor here, we're basically running at an hour runtime. So take notes there if you're listening back, Mr. Hodges. But be sure to check out BetStamp, throw in that USL code. And with that, we will cue Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.